What's up, Mortgage Coach community? Every Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific, we are here to mastermind with you. So, got a super special call. All of them are special, but to me, this one is super, super special. I was at a event, I think it was last week in Seattle, Lenders One, and I met up with a bunch of old friends. Literally everybody that's on this call right now, we were all together in Seattle last week. What's up, Kristin Messerli?
Hello. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you've been on a number of Mortgage Coach calls lately. Guys, make sure you, I'm going to put a link down below to the call I did with Kristin and Denise Donahue about how to get to the first home buyers faster before the realtor. So check that out down below. But I asked her to be the host of this. So I'm going to open it and then I'm going to hand it off to Kristin. And I'm going to think of this as a virtual panel. I'm going to be one of the panelists and Kristin's going to be the host. We've also got Ryan Hills on today's call. What's up, Ryan?
What's up, buddy? Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. So I've been on the R-Resource weekly video multiple times, but it just, we were having a really good time. We were having some conversations with Coronas in our hands. And dude, I can't believe you've been doing this for 10 years.
I know, it's kind of weird. It just kind of snuck up on me too. And just this year, you work so hard at a goal and you're always focused on, on the goal. And we all know this. It's like a Miley Cyrus song. Like, you got to enjoy the ride too. So I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I have been doing this for 10 years. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So guys, for 10 years, Ryan has been doing a weekly video that's highly produced. It's a subjective opinion, but my opinion, it is the best weekly show in the mortgage and real estate space. They keep it under 5 minutes, and it's incredible. So 10 years he's been doing this. And then we've got David Lykken. What's up, David?
Good to be here. Love Mortgage Coach.
Love you, brother. Every time I do a video with Dave Lykken and I post it on LinkedIn, it blows up. It's literally one of my most liked, watched things. So I don't think he needs much introduction, but the frame I did want to put around it, he's been doing a podcast for 10 years, every single week, 10 years. I have been doing a Mortgage Coach video every week for 12 years. More than 10 years. So I wanted to do this panel and I wanted to be on the panel and have Kristin host it. So Kristin, with that said, I'm going to only talk when I either see someone ask a question or give a comment in Facebook, or when you ask me a question or tell me what to do. I'm going to go get in the panelist chair.
Okay, so fun. Well, it is such an honor and exciting opportunity to have so many of you here that have been doing this for so long. I know everyone is trying to get in the content game and bring leadership around how to just be in front of their networks. And I remember David hearing his podcast when I was first really paying attention to the mortgage industry and really before podcasts had become a common thing, I think. And then Dave, of course, and Ryan been watching videos before everyone was doing videos. So lots of innovators here to talk about how you've been doing it, how you made it, and how things have changed. I want to encourage you guys also to ask questions to each other. And so if you have questions that, to bring up, we can go from there. And of course, everyone in the audience to submit your questions, Facebook or on Zoom, and we'll respond to those. But to start, I thought I'd just ask you, each of you, what you've learned over the last 10 years of doing content. So,
David, you can go first.
You want me to go first? Okay.
Let the old man.
All right.
You
David,
go first.
David. No, you go first, David.
We got two Davids. So you're going to be Dave on this interview. I'll be David. That will keep it straight like that. How's that?
Let's just go in the order of age. And my elder.
Yeah, but so the question is, how did I start doing it? How did it come up? I already forgot the question. I
would love to know that, but I asked what you've learned over the years.
Oh, yeah. First of all, it's amazing. What I've learned is the power of just having the guts to get up and get going and starting something like this. creating content. And how I got started was I was giving a speech on a particular topic, and I was thinking, you know, I think I know this pretty well, but I'd like to get on a conference call. Then as I was thinking, I want to get some people together on a conference call, and I'm going, well, why don't we record it? And then someone says, why don't you do it live? And I go, how do you do that? So ours has been a live podcast for 10 years, and it's to provide content. So I'm going, well, if I'm wondering about this particular topic, it had to be LO Comp at the time, I think there may be some others. And what happened was it blew up, and we started having like 5,000 followers, like almost right out of the get-go. And it's grown from there pretty substantially. So that was how I got into it. Is the why, which I think is such an important thing for us all to figure out, is to share information, share it on a viral basis, and just get it out there for people to benefit from.
That's amazing and so inspiring. I'd also like to know, Ryan and Dave, how you guys got started before you get into lessons learned.
Ryan, I'll go last.
Okay. I'll start with how I got started. I actually was many years ago, most of us know Frank and Brian, so I was watching their show, and it was during the downturn, and I was pretty young in the business, and I had to figure out how, you know, I didn't have years of a database and hundreds of realtors to rely on. And I remember, you know, the day when all the companies closed, I had a stack of loans that I knew what they were going to pay me, but now it's equal to zero because all the companies closed down. And so I didn't have the expertise or experience to fall back on that most of my peers did. So I had to figure out what I was going to do just to stay relevant, like to stay in the business. And so I had seen their show, and I was like, well, I think I can do that. And so I jumped in front of camera with my partner, RC, and really back then it just started with, I've got to survive. I've got to become relevant in my tiny community. And this seems easier than having a lunch with 15 realtors every day, because then I get really, really big, having so many lunches. So let me try to do this and try to reach multiple realtors at once. So that's how I got started, and then the show blew up. And now we've got, you know, I'm thankful to have viewers in every state, and we've got thousands of subscribers. So that's how I got started. What I've learned is I'm in Park City, Utah with some really smart people. I feel very down here. There's high-level regionals that have all brought all three of you up during this whole trip. I'm surprised I even have video here. I'm out in the mountains. And they talked about your LO Comp show, David, and Savage. They talked about you and everything you've done for the industry. And so that kind of proves the whole concept of why we create content. And some of that content was 10 years ago. Like, oh, I remember when LO Comp was changing, like we had to listen to that podcast just to find out what was happening. So for me, you know, my coach who's here, Bill Hart, calls it gravitational pull. And so whether you're a loan officer, regional recruiting, you know, Kristin, you're a speaker, Dave, you pretty much do everything. David, you're a consultant. You know, we can hope that the phone rings, or I can produce content and throw it out in the universe. And those are all opportunities that have a gravitational pull for opportunities to speak, Kristin, and Savage, opportunities for mortgage coach, David, opportunities to consult. If you're a realtor, opportunities to sell a home. If you're a loan officer, opportunities to do financing. And so for me, I just learned it's like working smarter than harder. And so I want that gravitational pull. It just seems easier to do that, like business to come to me and have opportunities for me because of the content I produce, than me having to go out to every single person in the world that I want to do business with. So that's, you know, just one of the things I've learned doing 10 years of content. I hope that makes sense.
Definitely. That's great. Dave, how about you?
So I mean, the why started coming out of the mortgage meltdown. We, you know, one learned who used Mortgage Coach, you know, like who paid that Mortgage Coach, who used it. And then there was no sales meetings. I mean, it was a pretty depressing time, and, you know, people were just hiding out. And I felt like leadership is not hiding out, it's communicating. And I felt like one of the most valuable assets of Mortgage Coach was who was using Mortgage Coach. They were advisors, they were leaders, they were successful. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do the best sales meeting every week. And I would find, you know, great people that are inspirational, that are successful, and I would interview them. And it was just every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, I'm going to interview someone awesome. And my goal was really simple, to have the single best sales meeting happening in the entire mortgage industry every week. And so, that was the why. Lessons learned, I'm kind of mimicking what everybody else is saying, but, the impact has been staggering. I didn't do it to become well-known in the mortgage business. I was already somewhat well-known because I had spoke on stages, told my story, and that's how Mortgage Coach, became a thing, was talking about it, telling my story at Sales Mastery and people buying it. But I did it to shine a light on amazing people in our industry. And, I'm just stunned at the number of people that have gotten value from it. It's lesson learned. If you lead, if you use video, if you leverage technology, and then of course, the social media is like the modern day CRM. I can go from, I have an idea, to I'm interviewing someone, to it's published in our YouTube channel and socialized on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. I mean, I could do that so easily, so quickly, and create so much impact. So the impact is the learning.
Yeah, amazing. And Tamala says that this has been so wonderful for those that work individually and remotely, worth every penny. I think for a lot of us that are wanting to create content, we want to have that kind of impact, and we want to, but there's a lot of fear, right, about being in front of people, or even especially going live. Now there's Facebook Live and Instagram Live, and a lot of people are doing that kind of thing. And for all of you, I see content from you constantly. I don't know, are there any particular mistakes that you've made along the way that can help some of us realize that you just do make mistakes as you go, especially when you're doing live shows or producing lots of content? Any stories of lessons learned, but from mistakes that you've made along the way? Who's got one to start with? Dave?
Well, I can start. Yeah, you can go, David.
Okay.
I'll follow
Let's go
up.
with Ryan. Oh, David.
Okay. I'll go first this time. But because remember, Kristin, you got 3 guys that always have a story to share.
No lack of stories.
Yeah. So the way I think of it is it's like a callus. And I don't exactly remember 12 years ago what was going through my head, but I can assure you, I was scared. I mean, like, first time I ever spoke on stage, I could tell a long story on that, but I literally thought I was going to throw up, and it felt like throwing up. And it was like a dinner presentation, and I didn't eat dinner, and, it was things. So it's a callus, David Goggin talks about callousing your mind. And I love that term, callus your mind. Creating content, getting on video like this, it requires a callus. And, the first time I did live, Facebook Live, even though I've created countless Zoom interviews, that was like, oh, okay, that was, I had some anxiety for it. So I would just, tell everybody, like, there's no shortcuts. I think some people are more scared than others. So some people naturally, can jump on stage and overcome that fear easier than others. But everybody can overcome the fear. You just you gotta do it, and you gotta do repetitions. And, those are my thoughts. I'll hand it off to, why don't you go next, David Lykken?
Lykken. I think, Lykken, whatever. Takes a lick and keeps on taking, the best way to remember it. Hey, here's the deal. First of all, shout out to Bill Hart there, Ryan. You're with Bill. Hey, there he is.
This is live. Sorry, guys.
The heart. There's the heart.
What are you going to do?
It.
I love being with you. You guys.
It's awesome.
Wait a minute. We don't get something for Bill Hart? Like, come on, Bill, get back.
Oh, Bill, they want you back.
Come on.
Yeah, you guys. When it's your turn, right? You can like take one of your earphones out, and like you guys can have like
well,
side
that'll
by side.
Disconnect it, unfortunately. That won't work. That'll mess them up on the audio, I hate to say. I think one of the things that you need to learn is that, first of all, there is technology involved. It's not rocket science, but you do need to spend a little time to do it and get it right. That's not probably one of those things. But don't panic when the thing doesn't work quite so well. I've had the middle of a podcast. I'll never forget the time we were doing a live podcast. I had Dr. Jay Brinkman, a good friend, and now works with me into another one of my ventures, was on there, and the internet was so weak. All you hear is, it was just horrible. finally, it's the only podcast we just had to shut it down. It was just so bad. And I think one is you can get moments like that where you get discouraged. There's that handsome Bill Hart. Love you, Bill. Good to see you. I love you. What I love about Bill Hart is when he consults and coaches from his name, the Hart. I love it, Bill.
The Hart.
Thanks,
so anyway,
appreciate that, David.
Yeah. I think that the truth of the matter is what really comes is you cannot be intimidated. Get set up, show up. Which, in the case of Savage and Lykken, we both do ours live. Ryan, he does his on a pre-recorded. I think what we now do is we go back and edit. So when you do it live, then we take it down, edit out the goof ups that are there, and then we go up and try to get it up. And I love what, Ryan, this is a good toss to you, but I love how you've raised the bar, brother. You are and RC are constantly raising the bar and always going for excellence. And I tell you, excellence turns me on. And what you're doing with the excellence is just so cool. So love to hear about your angle.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we've really tried, so that's why I appreciate it, because we've really tried to up the production and the quality of the content. And, there's a lot, again, I was in the next room as high-level executives, and, creating content came up. And again, these are guys that have bought and sold mortgage companies 2 and 3 times over, and, are just incredibly successful. And they're starting to dabble into creating content in social now. And so this topic came up over the last 2 days, and they kind of pulled me in and hey, what mistakes should we avoid? And so we just talked about it. I would say commit if you're going to get into video, and I think you should. Like crazy if you don't leverage social and video. Commit and get good equipment. RC and Aaron have really pushed the limit at the RE Source to getting the best equipment. Kristin, you just saw some of that. Dave, you just saw some of that at the Lenders One conference. And so we've had a real commitment, and it's oh man, it's a lot of money, $5,000 for a camera and mics. I totally get it. But what good strategy doesn't cost money? So for some reason we get it when we pay for leads, but we don't get it when we pay for a camera or a mic. And so for me, production's obviously very important. We take pride in that. And so I would say commit. If you're going to get into this space, commit, get good equipment. The other mistake, and the beautiful thing about video, they're all cataloged, so you can go watch a lot of my horrible videos that are 10 years ago. It's just the consistency, man. I think most people start a strategy, maybe 2 or 3 times in, it hasn't worked out perfectly, and so they just quit. And man, again, that whole first year of video was awful. I look back now just to humble myself, just to be wow, why would anybody watch this? They were 10 minutes long. I just rambled on about nothing. And so through that process, I learned that content is king. And that's a talk that RC and I travel and give. Prioritize content almost over anything else, even production. If you watch Gary Vee, his content is so on point that he can hold his camera and be getting out of a car, getting onto a plane. So that kind of dispels what I just gave you, which is production. Production's super important, but if your content is so on point, it can overcome some of the production struggles. So if you're going to start producing content, just make sure it's the best. And it's not all, again, mine wasn't the best out of the gate. I stayed consistent. My production all came up. So all of those are important, but prioritize content first, production second, consistency, just continue with it. So
can I jump in? I want to jump on that
Dave.
equipment thing in just for a minute. I was doing a live Fox broadcast in New York. I flew in. It was with Kabuto, and as I walked off stage, I walked up to one of the camera guys or one of the producers. I said, "Hey, I'm about ready to start doing more video. What camera do you recommend I get?" He says, "What you got?" I said, "I've got an iPhone." This is a long time ago, so whatever the latest model was, I'm addicted to getting the latest model. And he says, "The camera you have in that iPhone is as good as what we're using in this studio right now to broadcast live." So I agree with Ryan's statement. As you do it consistently, you start working on your production, invest in good equipment. But don't let that be an inhibitor. If you don't have the $5,000 cameras and his
100% agree.
setup, and I mean, get started. The most important thing is you started with what you started with. Dave Savage started with what he did. I started with and you will grow into the equipment. You'll probably get addicted and start buying stuff more than you probably need. But here's the thing, is start getting started and work on your content. Then add the equipment as you're going. And I know you agree with that, Ryan, but give you a major shout out for the equipment investment that you have made. It's awesome. But I don't want that to be heard where people don't get started. That's the biggest mistake.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That's a good point.
And just to put my thoughts on that, I mean, I think the biggest mistake is worrying about mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn, and the content goes. We put it out there, it gets viewed, and then it's next. So, don't worry about mistakes. And then I also, well, I think you said this, Dave, I want people to realize it's not like, okay, there's iPhone content and then it gets more elevated. To me, there's both. Like there is highly produced. And when I think of highly produced, that's a combination of how it's shot, what's the camera and audio quality, and then how it's edited. Is it edited? Mm-hmm. Is it not edited? And I don't think it's like one's better than the other. Like Ryan, everything you do is highly produced and shot at the highest level you can do it, and it's edited at the highest level. But I don't think like it's better than an iPhone. It's just different. It's just it's a different type of content. And the biggest mistake is not playing the game. Content is leadership, and leadership is what drives growth and success. That's simple.
Yeah.
And Ryan, you brought up
another point that I'd bring comes up. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Well, I was going to say on the content issue, you might say, well, everything that's going to be talked about is already covered. Well, look at what Ryan is doing. Is that a lot of what Brian and the crew they did? What they're looking at. Here's the deal. When you add your personality to the message, it may be exactly what Ryan's saying. But if you add your personality in your local market, you will not believe the impact. So don't get into this lie that, I would also consider repurposing what Ryan and David does, what I do to a certain degree. To repurpose it. That's a good idea, a good way to get started. But the most important thing is let your voice be heard. I would take Ryan or David's scripts and just take them and go verbatim right off of them. Because when you add your personality to it, it's going to be received in a way that is going to help you identify your brand. So love your guys' thoughts on that.
That's such a good point. And I think everyone has a unique voice to be heard. And so it's a really good point to bring up. And Ryan, you had brought up a good point about consistency and how, we get excited about producing. I know I do this all the time. I get in a run and I'm like, okay, I'm going all in on content. And then I'm tired and I'm like, man, this isn't that fun anymore. And so you have this like ebb and flow. How do you guys have that consistency? Like, do you follow a schedule or, what keeps you consistent? We definitely follow a schedule. We always will shoot Friday morning, and the team will produce and edit all day Friday, and then we release every Monday. But Dave, you mentioned Goggins earlier, great book, Can't Hurt Me, and he talks a lot about physical fitness, and that's the same commitment. Like, I'm not a guy that works out a lot, obviously, but like, there's definitely weeks that I don't want to have to, use my brain and come up with something creative. But it's got to be the same thing with Goggins talks about getting up and going to do the run and commit. Like, I don't want to do it, but I get in it, and then I'm happy that I did. So there's definitely been fatigue over the years for sure. And I've had people around me, again, RC and Aaron, have pushed me when like, hey man, I see that you've traveled a lot, you're tired. Let's grind, man. Let's do it. And so I've had that support around me. But yeah, I mean, just like anything else that you've done for a while, there's times that you're not going to want to do it. You just got to push through it, and you're going to be happy that you did. I mean, I'm proud. I can't remember if we have missed shows over the last 10 years. I mean, think about that, like week after week after week. It's a big commitment, but I'm so happy that we have committed to it.
Yeah, I jump in on that point when you're talking about showing up on a consistent basis. I think the most important thing is the consistency, but on the message, when it comes to content, number one is who is your audience? And if you're producing content for your audience, why not ask your audience what's on their mind? So what we do is we poll people for our podcast. So we have the first 8 minutes, first 30 minutes of our podcast is a shorter segment. So we cover a host of issues. The hot topic is research. We go out and ask our target audience of who we're wanting this to go out to, what is at top of mind on them? What's bothering them? What's got them staying up late at night, or what they're excited about? And so number one, poll your audience. If you're going after your realtor market in your local community, find out what's going on in there. Is it loss of jobs, job growth that's in the marketplace? Could it be home price appreciation? All of the things, you know, that are there. And then focus your message and content around your audience that's in your target market.
That's a great point to bring up. And I was just about to ask you about your audience specifically, because all of you have a very significant audience, and you've been doing this for over 10 years. So how has your audience changed over that period of time? And have you needed to adapt to the changes in what people's expectations are, or what they're, you know, what they're looking for from your leadership? David, any thoughts from?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so first of all, the audience has changed. We targeted, so we're a consulting firm. It's the president, it's the C-level executive, CEO, CFO, the chief sales officer. I mean, anything at the C level, that's where our target market is. So that's where we go after there. But what's really interesting about the podcast, because with an audio only, we're starting to produce, you know, after being around Savage and Hill here, they're inspiring me to do the video thing. But the nice thing about audio, and what's so fun is seeing Ryan now is going audio. So he's stripping out the audio to provide it. When you're just doing audio, you can do it when you're driving your car, when you're working out, when you're mowing the yard, or whatever I think. So it can play in the background. What's interesting about that, it self-selects winners. It self-selects those that are working on their career. So if you're recruiting and interviewing someone, one of the number one questions I'd recommend someone asking is, do you listen to podcasts? Who do you watch? Who influences you? If they bring up anyone that shows interest that they're investing their time in self-improving and self-improvement by watching any of us three, and there's a host more out there, that is a big indicator. I want that person on my team. If they don't come up with anything, they go, podcast, Ryan Hill, Dave Savage, not sure I know them. I gotta tell you, don't hire them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Dave, you speak to the digital transformation all the time. Any thoughts on how the audience has changed, or how digital has changed? Although I just saw Dave fall off there. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm back.
Okay, there you go. Okay, cool. Any thoughts you want to contribute on how things have changed over the years? Yeah,
no doubt. And it has changed. I mean, I've started using GoToMeeting, and we evolved to Zoom, and then, you know, Zoom added the feature to make it easy to publish on Facebook. You know, we're being pushed to have a combination of video content and audio content, and I've, you know, planned for some time to, you know, not necessarily do different content, because that kind of speaks to the consistency. You have to make sure, you know, you have a big why you're going to create content, and then you can't overcommit. You know, like when I first did it, it was just like, I'm going to do an interview every Tuesday, and I'm not going to do more than 30 minutes of prep. Like, you know, I could have done 8 hours of prep for every one of those, you know, interviews. And I actually got criticized that, like, you're not doing enough prep. But I was like, no, one, I can't dedicate that much time. And two, it will just be informal. It will come out right. So part of, you know, being consistent is having the why, and then being, you know, realistic with the amount of time you're going to commit to doing it. But I think the biggest change I've seen is just the different technology to create and stream the content, how it's evolved. I'm hearing more and more that our members are, you know, listening to my interviews on YouTube, but they're listening to it. So they're using YouTube as a podcast. So that's new, and I hear that all the time. In terms of just like who is tuned into the mortgage coach community, you know, when I first started, you know, we were a loan officer first organization, and so it was just all loan officers. And I do think, well, I don't think I know a very large percentage of our audience are managers. You know, they're either producing ranch managers, they're regionals, they're heads of production that are very in the trenches focused. So we've seen an evolution of where leadership is listening to our interviews, and then they're repurposing. They're either taking the ideas and making them their own, and they're taking those into sales meetings, or they're actually, you know, I hear all the time, coaches, leaders, and managers are prescribing, shows that we did as part of their leadership. And so I think, from an audience standpoint, I think, somewhere between 30 and 50% of our viewers are now, managers and leaders that are using our content. And then one last thing I'd say is I've been surprised at just how many new loan officers are in the game, and they're in the media game. We are seeing a tremendous amount of just, I got in the mortgage business and I learned the mortgage business on Mortgage Coach. So that's another demographic kind of audience shift that I think is just, hockey stick growth right now.
Another thing that I think is really cool about what all of you have done is that you have brought your community and your audience into your content. And so I feel like so many people feel like they have ownership in your content as well. So can anyone speak to how you really shaped that community? I mean, Dave, I know you said that you didn't start with a huge commitment, but I see videos come up from you constantly, like at least every single day. And that seems like so much to me, but I know that you're strategic about that in building your community. And so how did you get into really shaping a community where people feel like they are really contributing to it?
So that's interesting. So I'd say about 2 years ago, I shifted from the 1 hour with a half hour of prep once a week. And a couple years ago, I had the inspiration that I need to have shorter content. And I could do more content and not really take away from my job as CEO, Mortgage Coach, and the roles that I have to run the business and to, grow the mission. And so I've just integrated it into my day-to-day. Like I didn't work more hours at the Lenders One event. If someone could control their mute, we're getting a lot of background noise.
Sorry guys, that's me. I got people walking through.
We called you out.
The public space.
Yeah, no problem. But but I at Lenders One, Kristin, you and I made a video together. Ryan at Lenders One, you and I made a video together. And so a lot of that content is just in my day-to-day business. I was talking to an enterprise head of production at an enterprise today, and we had a call scheduled on, how I'm going to help them, evolve Mortgage Coach. And he told me a story, and next thing you know, I'm like, oh, let's do a quick 10-minute interview. And so it was part of helping an enterprise grow Mortgage Coach. And I integrated that into my role, and I did a 10-minute video that will have massive impact for that client. That'll be used to drive the Mortgage Coach mission within that customer. And then it will be put into our YouTube channel and repurposed. So I think it's just integrating the creation of content into your day-to-day. And that's what I've done. And I've done that for about 2 years now. And now it's not about me, it's about our community. And that's why, it's not every day, but sometimes it's 2 times a day. But it's multiple times a week. I mean, I am doing multiple interviews a week by integrating it into my day-to-day job.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ryan, anything you want to add to the conversation around audience or building a community over the years?
Yeah, Savage is obviously a master at that. He's done that for so many years. And if you look up his content library, there's just, gigantic name after name after name. We pivoted, and after 10 years, we have to continue to evolve so we don't become dinosaurs. So we've added the masterclass series. As David mentioned, we had started doing podcasts and stuff. So we're trying to evolve the type of content and the delivery of content. So Savage inspired me, but also Derek Jeter inspired me. So Jeter everybody knows Jeter is a great Yankee, awesome baseball player. So he retires and he starts, if you guys don't follow this, you should, it's called the Players Tribune. And so the Players Tribune is basically just unfiltered access to athletes. And so it would be cool if Derek created content every week. But he was smart, and it was kind of like a page out of Savage's book. So not only does he create content, it's unfiltered right from the athlete, but you'll hear other athletes, like we've had Russell Wilson and Earl Thomas tell their stories on the Players Tribune. So I thought that was really smart to have content contributors in that space. And so not to give away some of my future thoughts for the show, our show, but we'd love to have more content contributors in our space as well. So I think what Savage has done is brilliant, and we're going to continue to try to evolve that. And maybe I won't even be there. Maybe it's like Kristin just dropping some good knowledge for the week, or Lykken or Savage or, Bill Hart. And so that's kind of the future growth of the art source in my mind, is having content contributors. And I think that just builds a really good community. It's so well-rounded. It's one thing to just hear from me, but when you hear from all of us and other speakers like a Sue Woodard, they're brilliant people. And so you get a really well-rounded perspective.
Yeah,
Ryan,
community, just like that.
Yeah, Ryan, don't stop. We got to have you on. We got to see that face of yours. I think it's good, but I think it's also around your personal brand, because you do bring some energy to it. And I think you could get a drift, because there is a certain level of fatigue that can set in for a period of time. But at least make sure you're on there for a few minutes. We got to see that smiling and handsome face of yours. Yeah, I think as far as getting the audience out, like we do an hour-long podcast. I mean, ours is a real challenge. And what's amazing, we hold people for the whole hour. We've got one company in Southern California that, because of the content we put out, they use our podcast, which happens to be live. For the first half of it, they use it as their sales meeting. So what's going on in the industry? They have the ops group together. So we cover interest rates, we cover what's happening in the regulatory environment. We look at, various aspects of technology. So it kind of helps them stay informed. They go, we outsourced our meeting to you, Lykken, you didn't even know it. So I think that's one thing. But also in our case, we take long content, an hour-long content, and we break it up into little segments. And what we do is we post a sound bite from a segment that's got a hook. Every good music, every good song, if you find yourself humming that thing, that's a hook. So we want to put a hook into it and draw them into the longer podcast. So that's one of the things I recommend people do, is find the thing that's their message, and take someone and have someone. We use people we're using people off of Upwork and Fiverr. So we went out and got the additional resources so that we're not always going. RC is amazing. If you guys ever get to meet RC that Ryan works with, it's just phenomenal. David's got some great people as well. But I'm telling you, you can go out very affordably, hire people off of Fiverr and Upwork to do the audio or video editing at a very reasonable cost.
That's great. Yeah, very practical. Okay, I could ask you guys a million questions, and I do, before the end of this, I want to hear where you see the future of your content going. But I want to remind everyone in the audience that you can ask questions, but also I want to open up to you guys. Do you have any questions for each other that you want to bring up?
Well, I got one. Yeah, go for it, David. I got several for you guys.
David, Lykken, your show is just so dynamic. I mean, you bring in so many people, and you do it every single week. So I just love to know, like, any quick tips on prep and having multiple people the way you do that. Just if you could speak to that, I'd love to hear.
Well, it was a real burden at a period when I first got started, creating content, scheduling everyone, getting it out there. So along came a guy by the name of Paul King, came through, I think it was Fiverr or Upwork, one of those crowdsourcing tools. And he says, I really like it. I love doing this stuff. Can I help you out? I go, sure. And now he basically does that all. So I come up with the topics. I'm reaching out to the community that we want to reach, and we're asking for the topics. I arrange the guests. I'll use my brand, my well-knownness, I guess, to invite them to the podcast. I flip it to Paul. Paul schedules it. He gets them on. He works through the talking points. They bring it back to me. And then we'll sit. If there's any questions, we'll have a phone call with them. So I think that for me, we're moving towards what you guys are doing is more video. We're going to still have the audio available. So we're going to be bringing that in because I recognize the power of video. That's one of the things we'll be doing. I think the other thing is then just having the variety of guests. And then what's the other thing that we're growing is once you have content, then you can go back and start repurposing it. Monday's podcast, this will come be Monday. I'm helping my daughter move. My wife and I are helping her move into her new place, so I'm not going to be there. Paul went out and pulled together all this content of all these other interviews and edited it into a content. We're going to be talking about Empower, one of my favorite topics where the MBA is going to supporting women in the marketplace and really developing that up. So we're repurposing that. And I'm just really jazzed to what's going to come up. I'm going to be listening to my own podcast. Can't wait to see what Paul's come up with. So taking content that you've created and creating a theme. Like David Savage, how many top performers have you did? And how many things have come up over and over? How cool would it be to start stringing together segments of your interview? Same with you, Ryan.
Hey, that makes me think of one more question for David, and then, you know, I'll throw it back to you guys. But David, what is the single most powerful or effective promotional strategy you've done? If there was just one thing that you're going to do to promote your content, what's been most effective for you?
LinkedIn. Hands down, B2B, LinkedIn.
Okay, Ryan, same question to you. If there was one specific tactic, strategy, or channel that you've used to promote your content, what would it be?
I'll tell you, it's something we need to improve. We need to be relevant in all streams. So LinkedIn is untapped potential. Oddly enough, it's been around for a while, but you can crush it in LinkedIn right now. We aren't. We need to do better at that. We need to do better on Instagram. Most of our stuff has been watched either on our actual website or on Facebook a lot. We have a good Facebook community. But that's one thing that we are trying to improve right now is being relevant in all of the channels. And so that's a good takeaway for anybody getting into content. Sure, you can crush it in a niche in one of the spaces. I would encourage you to try to get, you know, relevant on all spaces though.
You know, that's funny you guys said that. So as I asked the question, I was thinking about how would I answer that question? And I do think this is a valuable thing for everybody to think about is, like, you know, YouTube is our hub. We use Facebook and LinkedIn to promote, but I'll tell you what, like, I don't think we would have nearly the distribution or value if it wasn't for what we do offline. You know, like when I'm speaking at an event, I am promoting specific videos. When I had someone reach out to me, they referred to my mortgage coach, and I introduced them to someone on my sales team, and then I put a sentence in it, you know, and share a success story in our Facebook group, and I gave them a video to watch. So I think, you know, that's, if you ask me the question, it's like, it's not necessarily what I did offline, it's how much I've integrated the promotion of our content into the calls I have, the meetings I have, and if anybody ever watches me speak, you know, it's integrated into what I say on stage. So anyways, just
let me add one more thing on that. YouTube has got one niche feature that I did not know about, that it does the transcription of your audio. And if you turn that on, you can get one of the best transcriptions of your thought. So if you want to take it and pull quotes out of it, it's so easy. And it literally does it by the minute. So it literally translates into text everything you're saying with a really good accuracy. So turn that on if it's a feature you're not using.
Yeah, and to play off of that, I've been told I should do that. Not only, you know, does it transcribe everything, but that also gets uploaded into Searchland and helps you get more views because, you know, now you're going to cut more often in Google. So it helps you raise your Google score. And that has been on my to-do list to do that, and I haven't done that. So thank you, Dave.
Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, that's a good one. And then also Amazon now is featuring in the search. Google is now searching in search. Listen, so if you Google Dave Savage or Ryan Hill and your content, you don't have to go out of the Google search. You can literally play it in that search. So that's a new feature that's just coming out.
Yeah, that's big. Any other questions you guys have for each other?
Can I throw a curveball? And so the old guys have talked a lot. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Ask me a question?
Kristin, yeah, I want to throw a curveball.
Yeah,
I mean, we've all done it for 10 years. You're kind of relatively new to mortgage, but you've exploded. I mean, you've had so many conferences, hundreds of conferences. I think I read even spoke at Harvard Business School or something like that.
Wow.
I mean, you just like one day you weren't there and then one day you were everywhere. And so I'm guessing you leveraged social and video to do that. Can you talk about how you exploded so quickly?
Great.
Well, I mean, some of that is thanks to you and a lot to Dave allowing me to have a platform and a voice on your platforms. And that's really all of it, was people that gave me the opportunity to speak at their conference or speak on whatever platform that they have, to be able to promote my message. And I think as long as, I've always just been very authentic around trying to bring value to the industry and to, promoting next gen kind of home ownership and that kind of thing. And so I think because I haven't been pushing any kind of sales message through that, really, it's been easier to get in the door and get my name out there. But yeah, I'm loving learning from all of you about how you got going, because I haven't been super strategic around my content. And I think that's a big opportunity for anyone that has a message to share, to be really strategic around having consistency and having a platform. So
yeah. Love it.
Thanks.
Great question.
Great job. Yeah.
Great question.
Well, why don't we get into talking about the future? Where do you see your content moving in the future, or your content specifically? Any plans or goals or vision for your content in the future?
So I'll
Ryan?
start.
Oh, Dave.
Oh,
Okay.
no, right. So I definitely going to be more Ryan, you want to go?
Yeah.
I shared a little bit already. Again, we're just going to continue to try to evolve in what we do, and I don't ever want to become stale. So we've evolved quite a bit of how we're making content. So now we have a regular show that's like 45 minutes that you guys are familiar with. We've added in the masterclass and the podcast now. And then we're going to get back to some of our funny shows. A lot of people will see us and be like, wow, you guys had so many funny shows in the past. Why don't you do it anymore? So we're going to try to bring those back. It's interesting that you're talking about the future. I think the future is really bright for content creators, because go watch The Great Hack on Netflix if you haven't seen it. It's pretty interesting. It'll probably be like the first one I recommend when you pop into Netflix. But they talk about how Facebook and other places have 5,000 data points per person, which is also scary, but it can really define an audience extremely well. And so in the future, really now, it's going to be really, really easy. Lykken and Savage and myself kind of like had to suffer through the old days of social and video and content creation. Now with pinpoint laser accuracy, your message can hit anybody and miss the folks that you don't necessarily want to hit. And that's only going to get easier. Distribution, we haven't even talked about. Distribution is a whole nother challenge, and how you get your message out there. That part is going to get easier, and we can't dive into that a whole lot, but The Great Hack talks about why that'll get easier and how in the political arena they leverage those 5,000 data points to really get their message out. One quick story and I'll be done, but they figured out that the last election came down to 70,000 people in 3 states. So what do? I'm gonna put my message out to 300 million Americans? No, I'll focus on 70,000 people that are the influencers or the decision makers. And right, wrong, or indifferent, they were able to hit just those 70,000 people because they have 5,000 data points per person. And those are the people that decided the election. And so we'll have the ability to do something similar. We kind of have it now. Facebook's got an elementary version of that, but that'll only get easier in the future. But great documentary. It's insane.
That's interesting because I feel like it's getting noisier out there. And so it is harder to distribute your content, but it's actually the more you focus on a target audience and really get a specific message out to those people, it does become easier. So,
yeah.
Dave, how about you?
Love that, Ryan. I actually made a note to myself. I'll be watching. It's The Great Hack, right? That's what you said?
Savage, you'll eat it up. You and like Ken Perry are guys that would love this stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm on it. I'll be watching it this weekend. I think for me, it's being more intentional with the distribution and be more like we have this huge YouTube channel. I mean, with literally over 1,000 videos. So it's like, how can we get the right video to the right mortgage professional when it matters most? So like in our new advice engine that came out, we can put video. So we took it like, hey, that's where you create a total cost analysis. but we can give the right video at the right time based off of their usage of our platform, based off of what company they work for. So it's funny you brought that up. I mean, like, my biggest focus is we have great content. We have an incredible library. How can we make it easier for the people that follow us to get the right content at the right time? From a distribution standpoint, or no, from a creation standpoint, I mean, I am gonna, there will be audio, focused content from Mortgage Coach this year. Whether it's, I have a podcast, whether there's a Mortgage Coach podcast, I think you'll see multiple audio versions of our content. But distribution, the right video at the right time is what I spend my time thinking about. And anybody listening to this, if you have ideas or suggestions, let us know in comments. Also, if there's videos and interviews that I've done that you think are more valuable, let us know, because, there's what I think and there's what you think, and what you think matters most. So really, let us know what content we've done or I've done that creates the most value for you, and that would be a huge favor to me. Comment down below. I'd really appreciate it.
I'll jump in on this one. I think the future is the word edutainment. And there's nobody. How I met Ryan Hill was with Ken Perry down there, and they were shooting some video. I was laughing my hiney off, trying to be classy here, laughing my ass off listening to these guys produce content. Do you remember that, Ryan? You were trying to be serious.
Yeah,
it was Ken Perry is over the top. You got to check out knowledgecoop.com. I give him a shout out. It's awesome
Good
content.
shout out.
So it's edutainment, and so be educating while being entertaining. If you do this, always talking it the same way, but people are not going to stick around. So make it fun. And if you are really good on camera, screw up a little bit. Like we see Savage adjusting the camera, going, he's going to sit down, he's going to stand up, sit down. Be real on camera. That's the other thing. And then I think the other thing, as we look at the lawsuits that are going on with the realtors right now, we're going to continue to see disruption. Ryan, you nailed it when you had, I think it was Frank. Did you have Frank on when you, or was it, when you did the video
Brian,
on?
Yeah.
Brian, you had Brian on.
Yep.
That was a must watch. Go back, everybody, watch that interview. It was awesome, because we're going to have some disruption happening. And when disruption happens, it causes for insecurity. What do people need most when it feels like their world is shaky? It's leadership. And if you want to bring stability and leadership, get your head back down. Don't worry what's going on. Go to work. This is what's happening. While not ignoring the change and the transformation that's happening, it's happening. We've only begun to just see the tip of the iceberg. So it comes back to leadership, doing edutainment, but bringing leadership along with it. That's the number one thing we're going to be focusing more and more on as we continue to lead and go forward the industry, is trying to bring as much leadership to it. And I'm trying to imitate Hill and Savage and Ken Perry as much as I can and all of that.
Hey, I want to add on
awesome.
to that. So one, guys, if both of you, you've talked about videos, you talked about Ken Perry, you referenced one of Ryan's videos everybody needs to watch. If you could, after this call, put a link to that in our Facebook group in comments, so that, if you're watching the recording of this, everybody, there'll be links in comments down below, so that, one, you can sample their content. If you haven't watched their content, I wouldn't have these guys, I wouldn't have invited them to this party if I didn't think the biggest gift I could give is for you to engage with these guys. If you're a mortgage professional and you want your next 10 years to be better than your last 10 years, this is how you should be edutating yourself. Yeah. And then Dave, I love that you use that term, edutainment. Kristin, Messerli, and myself invented that word.
Did you guys? All right. I should have given you credit. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
No. Well, we actually invented the internet too, but no.
Move over, Al Gore. Come on.
Yeah, right. But no, in all seriousness, I'll put a link down below. Kristin and I at Lenders One, we thought we invented that word. We were pretty jacked about it. And it is an edutainment video to watch. So it's funny, Dave, that you said that, because that's another thing that I'm thinking about, is like, how can the content I create be more edutaining, you know.
Yeah.
So good. I am working on that too, brother. I love it.
Well, you
And that's actually,
you just come on camera. You're entertaining, David. So, but I think it's being more intentional about that. That's what I'm talking about. Go ahead. Sorry, Kristin.
and that's
You're
something,
entertaining.
well, that's something I'm talking a lot about in conferences now too, is that your homebuyer education and seminars and things like that need to be entertaining and need to be focused on the experience. So, and Dave and I just did our last coaching call also was focused on how to be more edutaining. So I love that word. And so glad we're closing out to talking about that. Before we completely close out, one thing that you think everyone should focus on if they're getting into the content game, what's the number one thing that you want people to remember? Ryan, we'll start with you.
Again, we talked about it. Consistency, content is king, and don't be afraid to leverage others like we do here. I'm big fans of all three of yours, and we've been on each other's, content, whether it's a podcast or a video. And so leverage each other, even if it's, a competitor in the space, it's a big space, we're all friendly peers and competitors. So don't be afraid to leverage each other. Three of the shows that are the most relevant that I'm proud of, Lykken, you just gave me a shout out on one of them, and they're not anything I did well. So this is not a shout out for me, but Kenny Klaus talked about iBuyer. And if you can find that, it's in our library. It's super relevant right now. iBuyer Conversations, one of the smartest realtors I've ever interviewed. You brought up Brian Stevens. That realtor lawsuit's only going to get bigger, and there's huge disruption coming from that. That's in our library. And then Barry just did a really good job talking about the future of rates, and that's like a half-hour long podcast. So again, not really anything I did. I just had them on our show and kind of leveraged another friend, kind of giving you an example of how this works out. And those are three super relevant, awesome shows that aren't awesome because of me, but it's awesome because of Kenny Klaus and Brian Stevens and Barry Habib. So don't be afraid to leverage each other and help each other out. We're doing it right now as we speak.
Yep. David, what's your one thing?
The number one thing is you say, well, I don't have content. I don't even know enough. I'm new to the industry. Well, then get other people. Repurpose theirs. You can take their video and add your thoughts and then edit in one of Ryan's videos or one of Dave's videos, right? But put your thoughts around it. So, or what I do is, honest to God, I just interview people. And that's what David Savage does really well. So you don't have to be the curator, the creator of all the content. It doesn't have to come out of, there's so much out there. So just get good, smart people or people that'll present the message well, that represent you. That's important. Make sure they represent you and your audience, and then have them come on and give them a platform. They're grateful for it. They're going to leverage you. It has a multiplying effect. Very powerful.
So good. And Dave, I'll let you share your one thing and close us out. But I also want to thank everyone for letting me be a host on the call. I want to rewatch this and write down all the notes because there is so much practical and inspiring information here. So thanks for all you do. And Dave, I'll let you take it.
Okay, so my one thing is, a mortgage coach video. First of all, it's the easiest content to create because it's the conversation that you're leaving on people's voicemails. It's the conversation you have with every buyer when you walk them through the options. And so just build your callus around, it's a video memo. So you don't have to worry about the creativity. It's supposed to be on an iPhone or your desktop video or your desktop camera. And so, that's a great way to build callus and expertise around just creating video. And then the other thing that it's same thing, but just adding on to that in the community this month, we're recommending that everybody reaches out to first-time home buyers. Kristin, you've talked about this a lot, how they don't realize, that they have enough, they don't need 20% to buy a home. With the credit they have, they may be able to qualify. And so I would push everybody in this community. And if you're using Mortgage Coach, use the rep versus own analysis. And just like you and Denise talked about in Tuesday's call, like every week she's using the numbers in the rep versus own, and she's creating a video around it, either on a Facebook story, an Instagram story, a video. Guys, that's easy. If you can't have the rep versus own conversation, like why to do that, it's easy to do. So those would be my advice. And then closing this out, guys, if you got value from today's call, give it a like. If you loved anything about it, give it a love. I'm going to hit the love button. I'm just so grateful for the people on this call. You know, I have gotten a lot of value from each of these relationships. I love your content, and I'm grateful for you, man. So I'll just go down the line. Ryan Hill, appreciate you, brother.
Ryan Hill.
Thanks, guys. Love you all, man.
Dave
Yeah,
Lykken.
thank you, brother. Love it.
And then
Love
Kristin
it.
Messerli, I'll knuckle you too. So appreciate everybody on the call and anybody watching. Please tune in to these channels. They are here because this is some of the best content in the mortgage industry. There are other great content providers. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Shred Media guys.
Yes.
You know, Jason did an awesome interview of me. Well, not because it was interviewing me. He's just a good interviewer. The guy's just so chill. You know, he's just so chill.
Got that baseball cap going.
To be with him, you know, so there's some other great content. I would love to know what are other sources of content that you like. Put that down below if you're listening to the recording. You know, what are the other podcasts, videos? Who are you tuning into other than the Mortgage Coach channel? Let us know. Take care, everybody.
See you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.